I don't have 7 pinkies. I can't go back.
Three, 2, 1. Welcome back to Perpetual Jank Machine, the only podcast.
I'm Miles.
I'm Jay.
And I'm John.
Oh, yeah.
Development is kind of a cerebral thing, but there are things that we can do that make the process easier in both the physical and the digital worlds. Your IDE can make a big difference in how productive you are, especially with how used to it you are, and also your physical condition. So I figured let's all share what we do to develop, what our surroundings are, what we prefer, and what we think might make us more or less productive. So you're on the record as being a filthy Vim heathen, Miles, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So what's wrong with you, firstly?
It's just the default thing. So, you've got a default to it. It's like the default Linux command line text
I thought
editor.
the default Linux command line text editor was ed. There is only one text editor, and it is ed.
I don't know about that. I've never even heard of ed.
You've never heard of ed?
What is ed? I gotta look this up. What is ed?
Ed is
the text editor.
It's an ancient text editor from a long forgotten time when drawing an entire file to the screen was too computationally intensive. So they made a really terrible text editor where you could change various lines from a command line. And somebody wrote a very funny blog post about it, 10 years ago. And it's kind of become a meme now just because A, it's terrible, and B, that blog post exists.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I don't think that's actually what people use by default.
I'm pretty sure it is installed by default, but I'm actually...
Well,
I haven't really used too many boxes where I'm like, oh, let's run ed.
Default on Linux, literally nothing, because Slackware, they don't even have dependency control.
So what do you do to your heathenist text editor? Is it just standard Vim, or do you have some plugins to it that make it more like Emacs?
Ooh, no, I got vanilla Vim. Ooh, take that. I'm a purist.
All right. Is Miles alone in that? Are you also one of the crazy people who uses stock Vim?
No, not stock Vim. I actually have quite a few plugins installed.
Okay, that's at least a little bit more understandable because that.
I'm curious. I have never looked into Vim plugins. I'm just too lazy, honestly.
I just copy whatever it says in the setup page because I don't understand Vim script because it's kind of bogus.
Vim script. I didn't even know it had its own little language kind of thing going on.
I wouldn't call it a language. It's more like a baby talk where you try to make a coherent sentence, but fail more frequently than succeed.
So it's more like a config. It's more like a config thing rather than a proper. Gotcha.
I use the popular ones like You Complete Me, which is an autocomplete based on context. And
I should probably download that. If I'm gonna be honest.
It's a bunch of C family language IntelliSense kind of, but that's about it.
Sense.
Are you using the built-in stuff, or is there an LSP client for it, or?
No, it's just vanilla stuff.
My next question was going to be if you wrote any plugins for your editor yourself, but I guess with Vim's terrible scripting support, it's baby language. It's just not suitable for those kinds of use cases.
No, I really wouldn't want to write a plugin for Vim.
Yeah, I just use Vim, GCC, GDB, all just standard stuff.
That's
a make file.
That's an interesting way to write a web page, Miles.
Oh my God.
I'm very honest. The thing that interests me about Vim is more of the keybinds. I don't actually care about Vim as is. I just like the fact it's modo, which means I get to do more powerful stuff in the second mode. Instead of having pressed Control, Alt, Shift, and Escape, and then a key, like Emacs people.
Yeah, my Pinky's never going to forgive me for that choice.
Yeah.
That is the default key binding for stuff like readline, though. So do you find that is there a way to hack around that? Because the readline key bindings and the Emacs key bindings are very similar. So I was able to transfer that skill. I'm curious if there's anything for Vim users.
Wait, what do you mean?
Don't think so. Go ahead.
I feel like I missed something. I'm a little lost to what we're talking about.
So you know how when you go into a terminal, or like a fairly modern terminal that uses the GNU readline library, you can press like Control N to go to the next line, Control P to go to the previous one, Control F, Control B for forward and back, Control A, Control E for beginning and end of line respectively. Those are all like the key bindings that you find in Emacs, and those are fairly like well standardized throughout the GNU ecosystem.
I've literally been using Nline and Home.
You're missing out, man. You're missing out.
I mean,
there are literal buttons dedicated for that. I don't know why you're using this.
But they're so far away.
Yeah, I'm with Drone here. I just don't know when I'm gonna take my fingers off the home row. That's
All right. I mean, well, I can't even reach them. Like, depending on which keyboard I'm using. Like, you can sometimes get them with that pinky.
Yeah, well, at that point, why not?
What kind of crazy mutant extendo pinky are you using? I can barely get to the enter key.
Okay, no, I think you're right. No, you're right. You're right. I'm just imagining things. No, I do have to move my whole hand.
I am just putting my hand over my keyboard right now, trying to figure out what's happening.
Yeah, no, I'm an idiot. Okay, yeah. I've been imagining that I haven't been moving my hand. But
He is just really trying to hide the fact that he has a third hand, and that's the key for that's the hand that actually handles the numpad and like page up, page down. And he's like, oh no, I blew my cover. No, I got
the keyboard on the floor, and I actually hit the shift and all of that stuff. Anything off of home row with my toes.
Is it bad that I have been considering buying a floor pedal for Emacs?
And what? Just have it to say shift on it. Left is control, right is shift. Just keep pedaling.
I was thinking of binding it to hyper.
Oh, okay.
So I could do control meta super hyper.
I was gonna say, couldn't you just get like a mouse button? But then I'm an idiot. I'm like, that's definitely taking your hand off of home row. Oh my gosh.
Okay, at that point, I would probably alias it to an actual command if I have to press 17 different keys with 10 fingers.
Put keys on top of a key. Now we're thinking.
I have been considering binding right shift to hyper because I never actually use right shifts. I think it's a flaw in the way that I learned how to type.
Yeah, I think
capital A or capital Q.
Most people, I think, you just move your whole hand, your whole left hand into a weird position because it's a bad habit that I developed. And it kind of hurts my pinky, honestly, especially if I have to do something with mostly caps, like where caps locks doesn't work.
That's because you got a weak Vim pinky, Miles. If you had a strong iron Emacs pinky, that wouldn't be a problem for you.
I guess so.
I actually have a weaker Vim pinky because I bound my caps to hum control and control to caps.
Oh well, everybody does that.
And now
Whoa.
Well, see, you have a counter example right in front of your eyes.
Wait, what? What? What are you talking? I feel like I'm about to learn some knowledge here.
You can change the bindings by swapping caps and control, so that whenever you want to do a control something, you just do caps. And nobody actually uses the caps lock key anyway. I haven't met anyone that use it, so I'm changing.
Literally, first thing I do when I hop on a new machine is if it's a Linux machine, I set the X mod map control to actually switch your caps and your control key. Or if it's a Windows machine, I go to this one Stack Overflow question. I have it bookmarked on every single machine that I've ever used, and it gives you the registry editor file. And then so it swaps your caps and control keys, and then I just run that, and then I'm like, oh, thank God, I can finally use this machine.
Windows, I actually have to run an auto hotkey because I also bind caps lock to escape as well. So holding it as control and just pressing it as escape.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I use it extremely often, because Vim likes to.
How often are you hitting escape?
When do you not hit escape in Vim? Like, I change to escape whenever I finish a word.
No, you do have to move your hand. No, I'm just... Oh my gosh, what does this mean thinking I don't have to move my hand for anything?
You're just trying to blend into human society and his flowing cover.
Gosh. Yeah, I'm like literally practicing it. Like, I wish I had a video on my hands. I'm like just going through it. I'm like, oh my gosh, what else am I doing wrong? Well, I'm a purist though, so I can't swap to that helpful little tip that you told me.
On the topic of being a purist, I have something even better I would like to share. On my work machine, I'm kind of like more or less forced to use Visual Studio.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. It takes a while to boot up. I got used to it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like I accidentally click on it and on my terrible little computer is going to be grinding that for the next 3 years. I'll just
click on it and all of a sudden it's just like a jet
I wish it
taking
had
off.
like a cancel button. Like, you know how like it has that little thing that pops up that's like Visual Studio, how it's like loading or whatever.
Are you sure you meant to open this?
Yeah, they should have like a dedicated cancel button while it's booting up. I'm sure they wouldn't do that though, because like I feel like the program itself would get sad. It'd be like, "You need me? Oh no, you don't."
You're thinking too much like a human. You got to think corporate. They want to that would change their metrics on how many user engagement they have with the Visual Studio product. That's not good. See, I'm good at having corporate think.
I mean, I guess you could end task, but that feels wrong.
And most of the time it doesn't work because you have to end it by waiting for it to start.
I've never tried that. I assumed end task was like kill, like, you know what I'm saying? Like it can't not listen.
I actually don't know what it sends. So a lot of control shortcuts in Vim conflict with the Windows shortkeys, like, you know, Control C, Control V, those kind of things. Yeah. They happen to conflict. And so I have now developed, I changed some custom settings, but now I have developed memory where some of my control keys are Visual Studio keybinds and some of them are Vim keybinds. And remember which one's which so that I can figure out what went wrong when, you know, Visual Studio Vim crashes on me and say, hey, it's not responding. I'm like, oh, what? It's a very weird habit to develop, and I just wanted to say that if anything, I'm the opposite of a Vim purist. I've done nothing but contaminate Vim or, yeah.
I feel that. I actually have my Android Studio hotkeys set up to Emacs, but they're not perfect, and they don't work exactly like Emacs does, like for obvious reasons. So anytime I want to start like really cooking with gas when I'm writing some Android code, I always like I hit the Emacs key binding that I would use to do that thing, but like it's either a custom thing that I set up or it's not supported exactly as I intend it to be. So I inevitably like delete half of a class doing something and switch my file and then turn it into multi-window mode while I'm banging out my key cord, not really thinking about what's going on. Because, well, it's Emacs, it'll work, right?
Now we figure out who doesn't look at their monitor when they code.
I'm going to be honest here. You say Emacs a lot. I have never used Emacs. I'm like tempted to look it up now. How do you spell it?
EMACS, Emacs.
CS? Oh, I thought it had an X.
John tried to get me into Emacs a few years ago. And then for some like unrelated reason, I had to learn Vim. So I said, okay, if I had to learn Vim, what the best way is there to learn Vim? By using it. I used Vim for half a year-ish. It grew on me. I'm like, when I go back to Emacs, I just said, I don't have 7 Pinkies. I can't go back. John is forever disappointed that I betrayed him.
Yeah, Vim's just, okay. Emacs doesn't look that bad. I'm not going to download it, but it doesn't look that bad.
I'm not going to download it.
It's
what is this?
I mean, it's probably already on.
It's definitely a commitment to make. I'll give you that. You start with it and you're like, this is weird. And then it starts to make sense and it starts to click and you might start downloading some plugins. And then you're like, this plugin doesn't do exactly what I want it to do. So then you write some hacks in your init file to make it do what you want it to do. And then you're like, well, I might as well formalize this. So you start writing your own plugins for it. And it's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I don't know. You told me about your plugin and it sounds kind of trash. I'm not going to lie. Sound like a horrible plugin developer.
Okay, 90% of things you write are so niche that I'm confused why he even formalized it. But 10% of them are like super unniche, just no one else bothered to do it, and it's like super popular. I'm like, why don't you spend more time on that instead of the other 90%?
Yeah, like it's something you said still haunts me. You said a whole bunch. The person who built the stuff that you're building on top of, I think it was like also like he quit or something like that. So you've just been working around the bugs that he made rather than going back and fixing his code.
Well, no, it's not specifically like that. His code was mostly fine. It's just that it depends on a library that was really not intended to do the degree of heavy lifting that I'm requiring it to do. So I'm working around that library because frankly, that library is enormous and I don't feel like digging into it because it's very arcane and it does a lot of things that frankly, I would not have known that Emacs was capable of doing.
Why do you have to fix that whole lot? Couldn't you just edit? Couldn't you just get rid of the library and only support the things that you needed to support?
I'm still not totally sure how it works, to be honest.
This is still on. This is going to be like, I'm going to look back on this and I'll be like, oh, this haunts me in a different way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, those poor people they're like, please help. And you're like, no. Oh yeah, I think you also said you only support non-vanilla Emacs builds or something like that.
No, I only support vanilla Emacs builds, and these people come in with their crazy modified versions of Emacs with like 600 plugins on it, and I'm like, dude, if you can't reproduce this with the vanilla build, I'm not helping you.
I misunderstood. Okay, yeah, that one's okay. I thought you had like some weird like plugin set up, and you're like, oh no, it works fine on mine. And like, no, but we have vanilla, and then you're like, no, you got to download those plugins.
No, that would be
better.
That'd be a little extra. It is weird because I do have this knowledge of a language that is only ever going to be useful for writing editor plugins, and I am actually quite good at it, and I understand it at a pretty deep level, but it's just not useful. It's
what is it?
I feel like I know like a home language that only like maybe about 1,000 people speak, and I can speak it really well. But nobody's ever going to understand what I say except for the other 1,000 people who know that language.
I feel like I know Python better than I want to know. Like, I've done too many projects in Python, despite me not actually liking Python. I know it better than, like, C++, and I'm just like, do I want to? It just feels so bloated with features. And then, like, everyone wants you to know all of the features simultaneously, and you're like,
I still haven't got up to 17, so I don't even know. I don't even want to know what's in 20.
I mean, if Python is like a mainstream deity, C++ is actually Cthulhu.
It's so weird. They're like, okay, we made this feature for it, and it runs really fast. And you're like, hell yeah. And they're like, but in doing so, we had to just skip not making it confusing. You have three options, right? You could either have a programming language that's not confusing, a programming language that has lots of features, and a programming language that's performant. And you can only choose two of those three. And like C++ went fully ham on the performant and feature rich.
Why did nobody tell the PHP designers? They only chose one. I am still convinced to this very day that a programming language that has comparison operators forming a cyclic group is not a programming language anyone should use.
A cyclic group? Oh my gosh.
Yep. It is very possible to have three things that are all greater than one another. It's like a rock, paper, scissors scenario, except in a program.
Yeah, that sounds like a night. I don't want. I'll just.
Therefore, the forge methods are kind of like non-deterministic. Depending on the order of the input you put in, it can generate different outputs.
Oh my gosh.
It's very fascinating. But
that reminds me of like which is the one where you have to have three equal signs? I think that's JavaScript. Right?
That's PHP, but it's also JavaScript.
Oh my gosh. Whoever came up with that?
PHP had that because they wanted to do typeface comparisons.
Yeah.
So a double equals not enough. They put in a triple equals. But they never bothered to do that for, greater than and less than. So you can do typeface equality, but not typeface greater than or less than, which is why you run into...
Couldn't they have just found like another obscure symbol on your keyboard? Like underscore. I don't know. Just freaking throw underscore in there. Or dollar sign. Well, dollar sign.
Well, speaking of dollar signs, actually, PHP has a long history with the dollar sign.
I was talking about JavaScript. What does JavaScript use the dollar sign for?
The dollar sign is actually a valid identifier character, so you can use a dollar sign in your variable names.
But I think jQuery, where the dollar sign is much more popular.
Mm-hmm. It's also popular practice nowadays if you're using observables in RxJS to put a dollar sign at the end, so you know that it's a type of that value and not the value itself, so you know to subscribe to it or async it or whatever.
Gotcha. Comma. They could use comma.
Are you just looking at your keyboard looking for symbols now?
Yeah. Comma actually works like it does in C, unfortunately.
Wait, how does it work?
Oh yeah, no, I completely forgot that you use commas in
like a sequence
function.
It can turn two statements into an expression returning the latter of the two
Oh,
well,
God.
I guess 2 expressions into 1 expression, returning the latter.
See?
It's how you write really hacky for loops. At least that's how I use it.
I get what you're saying.
I mean,
the for. Okay.
If you're doing something like that, you should stop and think whether or not you should.
That would make a really inefficient for loop, so I'm just not going to do that.
Well, I mean, it's the difference between putting it in the parenthesized bit or the body, but yes, it's not good practice. It's very bad practice.
I don't know. Anything that'll throw off my for loops, I feel like it's just going to kill performance.
All right. Now that I actually got my machine running, I can describe my programming setup for home. So this is another bit of a weird setup personally. I'm dual booting Windows and Ubuntu, but I'm too tired of switching between Windows and Linux when I need to do something. So now I just always boot into Windows, load up VirtualBox.
That's not that weird. I'm not gonna
and then
lie.
load up a VM that uses the actual hard drive if connected. Like the 2 operating systems are essentially connected, except one of them lives inside.
What do you mean? Oh, I think I've heard you describe this to me, John. No, John. I thought you told me about this years ago.
Oh no, I was doing it the other way where I booted up a Windows virtual machine that used a disk on Linux. So that way I could have my Windows, but Steve Ballmer could only spy on the virtual machine rather than the whole thing.
What difference does it make? Do you have the upper hand that you have outsmarted his spying?
Well, if I have Steam on Windows and my taxes on Linux, and I have my Windows virtual machine as a child of that Linux OS, then Steve Ballmer cannot access my taxes, whereas the other way around, he can.
I don't think...
You don't play Counter-Strike when you're doing your taxes?
I don't. I sure don't want to accidentally type in my tax return.
Yeah, it's getting cut.
Can you just leave in every single time we say that's getting cut? All the surrounding parts also get cut.
My work setup is like this pale imitation of my home setup. It's like mostly there. It's mostly there. I still use Emacs, but it's all compromised because everything that I do with respect to like my plugins for Emacs, it all assumes that the file system is like reasonably fast. And on Windows, that's not an assumption you can make. So everything just bogs down and you wind up waiting like 5 seconds on every key press for your language server to figure out what it's doing. So I just don't even run autocomplete at work, which I'm sure is not great for my productivity, but there's not really much else I can do because LOL Windows.
I apparently don't use autocomplete, so...
No, how do you work without autocomplete? I guess you don't have that problem. In C++, you have every class is like 7 words, not 7 letters. So if I don't have autocomplete, I don't know what I'm referring to exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely given me very encyclopedic memory of the JavaScript standard library, but it would be nice to have every once in a while because there are some times where I like type .lowercase instead of .2 lowercase, for example. Yeah,
I need autocomplete because I should definitely download autocomplete because every time I type something, I don't know how to spell. So I'll even write the variable name and then I'll be like, wait, I'll get an error message with the variable name and I'll be like, oh, I spelled it right the first time, but the second time I spelled it wrong.
Looking at our code base, I can tell you from experience that getting autocomplete is only half of the way there. You have to get a proof check or a proofread, something like that.
Yeah.
Because once you have autocomplete, you can just spell whatever the variable, the class wrong once. And now everywhere else in the code is spelled incorrectly. It's truly fascinating. Like how many typos you can find with just a simple spell checker.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I should probably get spell checker as well.
I find that I make my most embarrassing typos in comments usually.
Oh yeah, at least for the comments. Oh my gosh, yeah, I need a spell checker for those comments.
You don't have typos in comments if you don't write comments.
Yeah, that's the big brain move right there. Just
all right. So speaking of programming setup, what does your desk look like?
How do I describe a desk? It's a pretty generic desk, and I can say that because in 2 of the houses I have rent, well, 2 apartments I have rent so far, they both had this exact same desk. And
I know what you're talking about. Okay, so it's literally okay.
A very vanilla desk, it has a drawer on the right-hand side, and that's about it.
I got you.
Yeah, I guess
the fake wood texture.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I got you.
Yeah, I'm calling it the generic desk. And the physical setup wise, 2 monitors, 144 hertz each. And
do you think that the 144 hertz monitors help you react to compiler errors quicker?
But every once in a 5 minutes, when I'm moving my mouse, I can notice that it's slightly, moving smoother. And I can also notice how the blinking cursor is really blinking at 144. No, I can't. But,
oh my god, it blinks.
Yeah, it's blinking at 144 hertz.
It would just look like a dim cursor, wouldn't it?
Look, you're trying to get me feeling bias remorse. I'm not gonna feel it. Not very effective for programming in general.
I mean, I don't see how it's ineffective, but like, yeah, gotcha.
Honestly, if I'm only just getting a monitor for programming, my only requirement would probably just be they need to be the same.
You need one that could like flip like diagonally, that we can have that really long.
A diagonal monitor? So like diamond shaped?
No. Vertical. Yeah, you got to make it so it can flip vertical.
I'll be honest, I have not found that useful yet.
No, I one of my monitors is square because it's so old. So yeah, that hasn't really hit me yet, but maybe someday when I'm a rich kid. I'm
actually one of the weirds that has 2 vertical monitors and no horizontal ones, which
what?
is
Wait,
yeah.
What?
At work, not for my personal setup. I'm not that crazy, but at work I have 2 vertical monitors because one, I never watch videos at work for obvious reasons, and I want to see more code. And also, it also has the nice side effect of if you are developing a website that needs to work on tablets, you have both of your monitors using the tablet view, which is usually the one that gets neglected. So you can find a lot of bugs that way.
Fascinating. Well, at least you didn't say you're using one horizontal and one vertical.
It kind of makes screen sharing weird because like I don't have a horizontal monitor to share. So if I need to share something with somebody, they're getting like a 9:16 image in a 16:9 monitor.
Oh,
that's just like watching YouTube videos of someone filming vertically.
Yeah, that's actually what it is.
You need to fill the side spaces with like a zoomed in blurry version, like how they do on like the
No.
Jenny, you have really expensive keyboards. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, I used to have for the longest time this incredibly fancy gaming keyboard that I used for like 10 years or something like that. It was like this Logitech keyboard with the screen on it. I totally forget what the model number is, but it was the keyboard back in the day. Like you had a small screen on it. You were super baller. And then I upgraded
left.
Like in the top center, I think it was, was it the Logitech G15, 19, something like that? It was the one with like the screen on the hinge. It was like a full color, like 120 pixel high screen that you could, it actually didn't work all that well with anything because nobody's going to write software for a screen on a keyboard that 10 people own.
Support like colors or something like that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now and it sure has color and it has pretty high density.
It was actually really good. Nice quality. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But then I wanted to upgrade to mechanical, and then that died. That was a K70, I think. Yeah. And I didn't want to do any more research on keyboards, so I naively bought another K70, and that's what I'm still using. I kind of want like a Bluetooth keyboard, but I always remember I do so much fiddling around in BIOSes that is probably not a good idea.
Yeah. So I don't even notice there's a wire, so I don't mind it being wired all that much.
I kind of want to get a glass keyboard just because I feel like it'd be easy to clean.
A what?
Like a touchscreen kind of, and it's just got the keys screen printed on it.
Oh,
wait,
they make those?
I am so confused. What?
So it's like you're typing on a phone, but it's like a really big phone.
Like no screen on it. There's no screen. Like it's just capacitive touch on glass, like a phone screen.
It's not like you get Swift key on a big keyboard.
That doesn't sound like a very good experience.
No, it doesn't, but also it kind of does.
That sounds like something Apple would release and then like immediately unrelease.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
You're gonna see people gonna say it's like hip,
Do those exist? I know they have like projector keyboards, but those are also like not good.
It's definitely one of those like form over function, like kind of.
I don't even know how I would use a projector keyboard.
I'm just tired of like having to clean keyboards because I got a bird, so like dust gets everywhere.
I just don't clean it. I just hope no one else looks at my keyboard.
Okay, what if you have a thin, somewhat stretchy, like a rubber thing over like a keyboard where like there's cutouts where the keys would be, so like you can kind of press it in a little bit and you can kind of feel where the keys are?
That's just
they had that
you can wipe it off.
School for touch typing. It was like a rubber mat that goes over your keys, and then it covered all of like the letters, so you couldn't see the key letters. It sounds like, I don't know, I feel like it would make it feel like no matter how good your keyboard is, after that, it's going to feel mushy because you're literally pushing down a silicone mat.
I was thinking the material you have on the balloon just like pulled taut over like a chain link fence, but diagonal. So that way, it wouldn't be mushy because Okay, you have a grid, right? A grid of little metal bars or whatever, and they all intersect. So it's like a grid of square things.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And then you just pull a balloon over that, and then you can kind of push down on it, so you still get a little bit of tactile feel. It's not as bad as typing on glass, but you can just wipe it down.
Well, I think the thing about the tactile feel thing is resting your... Oh, I couldn't even rest my hands on these keys, would I? Or unless No, you could...
There are no keys, per se.
A harder press. Yeah, a harder press. How would that work? Yeah, I don't know how a glass keyboard would work. Would I not be able to touch it? Or would I have to just slam down on the key for it to be able to register? It wouldn't register light touches, but it would register hard touches.
Yeah, you're asking too many questions for me to be able to answer. But
why don't you buy one and you can report back in another episode?
Oh, this become like an unboxing channel or something.
Yeah, we can turn into an unboxing media empire.
The aesthetics on my desk would look pretty good though, but I have to clean my room for my room to even have any aesthetics at all.
I mean, look, man, my keyboard is already RGB. I have no taste in the aesthetics of my desktop.
So this week we learned about dependency confusion as another means of attack. This got quite popular on the programming forums and whatnot. So for those of you listening at home, effectively one guy figured out that a lot of organizations publish their JavaScript packaging manifests. I'm sure this happens with Python and other stuff as well. But JavaScript is really easy because the code gets shipped to the front end and a lot of people don't bother to remove those. And you can figure out what packages people are using. And inevitably in a large organization, somebody's going to break out a library for common functionality. A lot of times those libraries are hosted on private package registries. And there's no public version of that package on, for example, your standard package archives like NPM or PyPy. And effectively what this guy figured out was if I upload a dependency to that public package archive with the same name as the private package that people are getting from their private package repository, and I make the version a lot higher, there's a decent chance if you're using certain package hosting software or if your machine might not be configured correctly, that it can pull down that package. And then, especially with an NPM package, they have pre-install scripts. You can just run whatever code you want on that. And obviously you can do really bad things with that. So everybody in security collectively, their heart skipped a beat and they had to figure out if they were using any of the vulnerable software and probably claim a whole bunch of their organization's namespaces on those public package repos, or at least the names of the packages they're using if they don't use a namespace. So that was cool. Mildly concerning that
we should just switch to installing packages by the MD5 hash of it.
Or just switch to C++ standards and just not have a package manager and copy headers around between teammates, right?
Oh, okay. Oh, why we gotta make this bring up my PTSD?
I gotta say, this is just a reminder that nothing is secure, and even if you have the best security people around and they are on the top of their game, working 80 hours a week and somehow loving it, you're still going to be vulnerable to supply chain attacks.
80, that's amateur levels.
I think the moral of the story is programmers are idiots and don't take security into account until they need to.
Let's be honest. And when I'm writing 5 lines of code, I can't think of the 7 billion people out there and what the hell they're gonna do to it.
Interestingly, as the author of a whole bunch of plugins that people are probably, I'd say, likely to download and run, even in an organization that has a strict software installation policy, because let's be honest, nobody wants to review an Emacs plugin for security purposes. I could probably do some pretty evil things. I'm not going to, but I probably could.
If that I'm not going to on the record, or if that I'm not going to, as in I'm not going to.
I'm probably a bit... Well, I mean, what the hell would I do? I'm not going to use somebody's random source code from, I don't know, AdCorp 60.
That would actually be kind of interesting. You go into a popular attachment that their current developer isn't really working on anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Then you become
just
the
kind
new
of
current developer.
pseudo hostile takeover it, and then
then you just put a little thing where you're like, oh,
I mean, how long?
anytime this specific condition's met, I change this variable into this variable or something.
If I'm overriding, like, I don't know, version 4, well, 0.4 with a custom version 0.6, and I don't provide the functionalities, something's gonna break, right? Why wouldn't I know about it? That's my question.
Well, in the case of a supply chain attack, when you find out, it's too late. I mean, in the pre-install script, you could literally print, haha, you just got hacked, and your data's already been exfiltrated.
That makes sense, yeah.
Because by the time you're able to do anything with any side effect on the computer such that the programmer would notice, you probably already been able to exfiltrate data. Obviously, if your install is taking too long, you might notice and kill the dependency thing if they're trying to naively copy the entire hard drive of your computer up to the cloud. But again, presumably within that reasonable amount of time, it's quite possible that information could have been leaked.
Yeah. Hopefully no one's naive enough to install a random Emacs plugin on the prod server, right?
About that.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. He's saying that's pretty common practice.
Yeah, I'm just gonna install this on this, this machine with a lot of customer data. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I'll be too paranoid to do anything, to be honest.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, if you are a sysadmin, and again, this is not good practice, don't do this, but if you are a sysadmin and you need to just really quickly change a proxy configuration, and you happen to use Vim or Emacs with a very specific setup, you might potentially, in some cases, you may feel it necessary to download a plugin or something like that. Not a good idea, but it can happen. I can see how it would happen.
What you're trying to say is that Miles would be a good sysadmin because he's a purist.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, there you go.
My weird ideas suddenly having a purpose. Ooh.
All right, this whole episode is just set up for one payoff. All right, we've got it.
Only hire purists for your admin.
I mean, that's a joke, but I feel like, if you're really a purist when it comes to tools, it suggests a certain level of paranoia and being careful with what you're using. So that might be a good trait for a sysadmin.
I guess I am kind of careful with kind of stuff, but it also suggests a level of doing things the hard way for no good reason.
Yeah, I mean, you're just describing a sysadmin's job now.
I mean, if you really want your sysadmins to be inefficient programmers, then sure.
I mean, if they were efficient programmers, they wouldn't be sysadmins.
Yeah, I could use that library. Got him.
In fairness, all the sysadmins I know are mostly just editing tiny lines of config. If they need to do anything more heavy duty, they just pawn it off to the nearest platform guy.
Art imitates life. That's how it is.
Thank you.
Catch you guys later.
Thanks for having us.
Bye. I'm waving. You can't see it. Bye.
And that's the show. Thanks to Meydän, that's Meyda with an umlaut N, for their track The Beauty of Maths, licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 license, which serves as our intro, outro, and interlude music. You can find more in the description of this episode. Please remember that the opinions expressed in this production may not reflect those of other participants on the show, or those of any participants' past, current, or future employers. They're also probably exaggerated a bit for comedy's sake. Anyway, thanks for tuning in.